lined up. All I hear is jib jab going back and forth. And while I'm separating it, things are quiet. Then Shot comes around my shoulder and cracks the main dude in the face.
I don't like gang stuff.
I am not gang gang. I am not gang gang.
I don't like gangs. I don't like conspiracy. I don't like the word Rico. Like none of that. So, you see the young boys, you ain't got no bodies.
When did the relationship start to go south with 50?
You know, I was tolerating a lot of undesired energy.
We're talking about bribes, coercion, and people trying to pull up on 50%, forgetting that this man was about that life way before the fame for the OBS. You already know his street name was Boo Boo, and trust me, they knew not to mess with him even back then. 50 Cent's Bodyguard is out here revealing what really happened with the Crips and why Fit has had a beef with them ever since.
Boo Boo, I'm not gonna call him 50. 50 was a street that basically set the street shit, but was still involved in the street shit, and started rapping.
One thing about 50 Cent is that he has always been crystal clear that he doesn't gang bang. He has said this countless times, and it really does check out. When artists move into certain neighborhoods, they typically have to pay local gangs for security. It's like a street tax, but 50 Cent doesn't play that game. As a result, he has had problems with some high-profile individuals with actual influence, and ever since one particular run-in, Spider Lou was so shook that when things got heated in Unit, he dipped without even defending himself.
I am not gang gang. I do not gang bang.
I do not like Rico. I do not like conspiracy. Keep both of those brothers away from me.
These laws were designed to bring down the mafia. When you think crime in general, right?
And then look, when they would run into it, they go,
It's not the neighborhood stuff. This is the...
The funny thing is that, although he grew up on the streets, 50 was never even affiliated with any gang. He always went about his own way, forming his crew, fighting with much larger gangs, and remaining focused on his business. However, when authorities caught him at the age of 19, discovering a gun and a stash of snow in his home after he sold to an undercover agent, 50 realized it was time to leave that life behind.
Dude, he was outside when he was 12 years old. You know, his mother and father, he didn't have too much knowledge of them. He had most of the knowledge of his mother.
Nevertheless, Spider Loc was so enmeshed in the gang life that he even attempted to form a group called Unit Crips out of loyalty. And the other members of Unit supported him, even allowing him to perform with 100 Crips. However, this affiliation came with a lot of drama, and one show was abruptly canceled because the audience was so full of bloods. You see the issue, yes?
really with, Spider Loc and the Crips in LA. You know me, New York, so I don't really know LA politics.
Against my advice, he prompted the homies to take the stage with him, and he announced to the San Diego crowd something to the effect of, "What's wrong with this picture? I'm a New York 100 Crips on stage."
Not only were opposing gangs showing up at concerts, but Spider Loc's music video sets were also being shot at. Ready for war, 50 Cent had to make the difficult decision to cut Spider Loc loose before things got out of hand, since he realized that this couldn't go on as the gang ties weren't just an issue, they were a threat to his entire company.
Detail, I told the story plenty of times, but him doing that triggered some irritation from the crowd. And one thing led to another, and there were items going back and forth from the crowd to this day.
Furthermore, as everyone knows, 50 Cent has never backpedaled against anyone, not even powerful figures like Suge Knight. For example, when Suge tried to intimidate him when he was first starting out, 50 didn't bat an eye. In fact, he showed up for the Induct Club video shoot knowing full well that Suge was attempting to intimidate him, but he never considered backing down.
He came, it was like, "Shoot us outside! Shoot us outside!" Everybody like, "Shit!" He was running, dropping. Like, man, everybody going, I'm in front of the camera.
However, let's be clear that Spider Loc isn't the only person who has had problems with 50 Cent over the years. Some of his most significant confrontations have involved the most influential and dangerous people in the business, but 50 always manages to win. Let's go back to March 24, 2000, the night 50 Cent was stabbed in the back outside the Hit Factory studio in New York. And we all know why his famous war with Ja Rule and Murder Incorporated was at its height.
I'm beefing 50 Cent. All I hear is say, well, if you try to get me shot, or it has something to do with getting me shot, or this.
The incident began when one of 50 Cent's associates grabbed Ja Rule's chain while he was out in Queens filming a music video. Then, chaos broke out. And the next thing you know, Murder Incorporated bosses Arv and Chris Gotti were accused of roughing up 50. However, by the end of the night, the charges were dropped, and 50 took 3 stitches from the attack. But if you know him, you know he doesn't take losses lying down. Things got even worse at Hit Factory when Black Child stabbed 50 Cent, claiming self-defense because he believed someone had a gun.
Through the lobby, me and Josh chased him through the lobby, and then the elevator doors just like, oh, just in time. That's a whole nother story.
Despite this, 50 Cent has remained unbeaten over the years. Even after VV Gotti passed away recently, 50 remained petty as ever, posting a picture of himself smoking hookah with a fake gravestone caption that read, "I'm smoking on that." Then came Bang Murph, one of 50's original day ones. Before 50's fame, they were close. But by 2004, their brotherhood had completely collapsed into pure animosity. God bless him.
Smurf? Yeah, look. That's my baby. You understand what I'm saying? Smurf is my baby.
Chaos quickly broke out as 50 Cent and G-Unit were performing when, guess what? The Silverback Gorilla Crew and Bang M Smurf Squad Domination pulled up in the front row to make fun of 50. 50 wasn't going to let that get away with it. So he and Lloyd Banks began dishonorably throwing money at Bang Murph, treating him like he was nothing. If that wasn't enough, 50 went one step further and soaked him in water, further humiliating him.
So I said, oh, that's how y'all doing it up. That ain't tossing me up in there, so I jumped back over the barricade and shit. So I started throwing chairs. I see the dudes on the floor, we throwing big dudes like, because then there was a mini ride.
The DJW kid, who was spinning that night, said he didn't anticipate things to become that crazy. But this is 50 Cent's world, and things like this come with the territory. Smurf lost it and attempted to leap over the barricade, while his crew began throwing chairs at 50-50 and going to interview 741/751. Of course, 50 Cent's fight with the game is one of the most explosive in hip-hop history. It began in February 2005 when 50 pulled up to Hot 97, intending to end the game for good.
Ship is repairable. I don't know what really caused it. I don't try to patch relationships. When they fall apart, you have no idea.
In an explosive interview with Funkmaster Flex, 50 Cent called out the game for being disloyal since Dane refused to stand with him in his feuds. However, as 50 was airing him out on live radio, his crew was already waiting for him smoking outside Hot 97.
Long at the hallway, and I was like, fresh light, Impala, and then Dre was walking back in the studio, and he was like, hey, I was like, yeah. He was like,
Gunshots then broke out, and one of Game's guys, Kevin Reed, was struck in the thigh. Game decided it wasn't worth it and backed off. But the damage had already been done, and their beef never really died. Next came another war, but without 50 Cent and Jimmy Henchman. It all started in 2005 when 50 made disparaging remarks about Unit in a live interview on Hate Talk 97. As you might expect, Jimmy Henchman, who was responsible for the game at the time, wasn't going to tolerate that disrespect.
You can't do an interview inside of Hot 97. Right. Because I think it was like that building was part of like some...
It was Viacom or some shit.
Well, no, it wasn't Viacom. It was like part of like some union or something. Workers union or something. And they were like, man, listen, you can't have this.
Still to this day.
Yeah, to this day. You still...
Tensions turned into anarchy. By 2007, things had taken a dark turn when Henchman's 14-year-old son was jumped by members of G-Unit, including Tony Yayo, Lomac, and Baby F. If you know Henchman, you know that he wasn't going to let that slide. His retaliation was swift and brutal, making the situation even more dangerous while 50 Cent and then were filming their I'll Still Kill music video. Arguments turned violent, and there were alleged gunfire exchanges. Later, Tony Yo asserted that Henchman and his squad arrived fully armed and prepared to eliminate 50 and his whole team.
Henchman and them were supposed to come through, and I guess they gun jammed, but we had guard on that side, and they backed out on the hit, but we had straps too, and that really...
Both Lomac and Tony Yo were found guilty of their roles in the attack on Jimmy Henchman's son. Lomac served time in prison, while Yo received community service. However, only a few weeks after Lomac was released, he was shot dead in what many believe was a revenge strike planned by Henchman himself. Then, in March 2015, Henchman was found guilty of ordering the murder of LX, receiving a life sentence plus 20 years in prison. However, this story was far from over. In a shocking turn of events, his conviction was overturned in November 2016, leaving the entire saga as chaotic, unpredictable, and deadly as ever.
At the end of the day, when the kid got slapped, right? It's all fair war. You already know it's gonna go. You know, for anybody that got kids, I understand how to feel. But at the end of the day, my shit got shot up.
However, that isn't all, because Jimmy Henchman's name is associated with one of the most notorious incidents in hip-hop history, the 1994 shooting of Tupac Shakers at Manhattan's Quad Studios and Guest, whose name keeps coming up in relation to that failed ambush. Many people believe that this incident sparked the East Coast versus West Coast War, a rivalry that ultimately resulted in the tragic deaths of both Shaker and Biggie Smalls. Henchman Jimmy.
Associator Jimmy point blank told me in a conversation that they had him
In a shocking revelation, Shaker was shot and robbed that night by Dexter Isaac, who is currently serving a life sentence on unrelated charges. It was long suspected that he was paid to carry out the hit, but here's what makes 50 Cent legendary. After hearing everything, do you still think Jimmy Henchman was worth $2,500? What about Spider Loc? Was he truly afraid of 50 Cent? Or was this just business gone bad? If you enjoyed this breakdown, please hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss a thing.